Hi folks, Dave, the Honest Audiophile. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. So, I get a lot of products in for review. Most of the time, I'm asked if I want to review a product by a vendor, by a manufacturer, or by somebody who is in the community and wants to lend it to me, fellow reviewers, or subscribers or viewers. And I'll research the product, look it up, and make a decision, based on whether or not it interests me, if it's maybe something that's being talked about in the community in a positive or negative way. Is it something that my community is interested in? Maybe it's been mentioned on live streams or, in the comments, things like that. And then I'll decide whether or not I want to accept a product for review. Sometimes things are just sent to me blindly, and I don't know that they're coming, and I have to decide, do I want to review this or not. After I get the product in for review, I will listen to the device, and maybe it really impresses me and maybe it doesn't. Maybe it starts to get more hype while I have it in house. And my review process takes about 4 to 6 weeks to complete, so it's in house for quite a bit. Sometimes things take a long time to ship. Sometimes I just don't have time to get to it for a long time. And over that time, the community can change their interest in it. Maybe there's just a lack of interest in the device overall. Maybe it just gets, moved along, or it gets replaced, or it gets updated. And, sometimes I just don't jive with the product, and I just don't feel like it warrants a review, or even warrants really any sort of recognition. I don't want this to sound bad, but it just doesn't deserve a review. And then other times, it needs to be said. And, so it's kind of a tough decision as to whether or not something gets reviewed or not reviewed. Some things get more detailed reviews than others. Some reviews are, just kind of given a ranking grade on the tier list and moved along. But I have the device, and I've heard it, so I can kind of talk about it if somebody asks. But I try to review everything that comes in, but sometimes I just don't have the time to be able to fit a full review in. And then other things, as mentioned already, they don't deserve a full review, but maybe they deserve to be talked about. So, with all that being said, today we're going to take about 3-ish, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, to talk about 4 different products very quickly in this video. And we're going to mention 4 things that have been on my desk for quite a while, some of them for several months, maybe even 6 months or so. And I just haven't had the time to do the review. And then when I've asked the community if they're interested, it's kind of been a few people here or there say yes. And most of these products haven't been pushed much. Now, a couple of them were quite popular a while back, and I just feel like they're just not quite going to get as many views as they should if I did a full-fledged review. So I'm going to toss all of these in, do 4 reviews quickly, give or take 3-ish, maybe upwards of 5 minutes on some of the devices, maybe less on others. We'll go by price. So let's start with the $60 Colorfly CDA-L1. Now this is a USB-C DAC amp. It has a Cirrus Logic CS43131 DAC chip. It is capable of decoding 32-bit 768, 256 DSD, and 128 DSD. Has a dynamic range of 130 dB, signal to noise ratio of 130 dB. Frequency response range is 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. And it has maximum output power at 32 ohms of 65 milliwatts on unbalanced. And then on balanced output at 32 ohm is capable of 150 milliwatts. Has 3.5 single-ended unbalanced and 4.4 balanced. It does have 2 different USB UAC modes. It has UAC 1.0 and UAC 2.0 for gaming, and it has a high-low gain. So The Colorfly CDA-L1, to me, it's just another $60 dongle. It doesn't really do anything special to set itself out apart, other than the ability to do UAC 2.0 if you want to connect it to one of your gaming devices. It's a solid performer when it comes to its sound performance. It has a neutralish type of presentation, but it's not the most detailed or the most resolving, and it has a fairly natural tone and timbre. But overall, it's just kind of a ho-hum, here's another dongle type of sound presentation. And it's kind of lackluster in power, being at 65 milliwatts on single-ended. It's going to drive some IEMs, but it's not going to drive super hard to drive stuff. And then it being at 150 milliwatts at 32 ohm balanced, it'll drive some of those more pesky, harder to drive IEMs, but it's definitely not going to drive the headphones and over-ear device. And so to me, it's just another USB-C dongle that doesn't do anything special and is solid performer. So if you do more gaming than anything and you use IEMs in a portable type of setting, the Colorfly CDA-L1 may be something to consider. Next, we have a headphone, or excuse me, not a headphone, an IEM that was very interesting when I was offered it by Shenzhen Audio. It comes in at $50. And that is the Opus OP.24. The Opus OP.24 is a dual dynamic 4-balanced armature IEM. It includes a silicone composite carbon fiber diaphragm. It's 15 ohms of impedance on the standard mode. On bass E mode, it's 27 ohms of impedance. Sensitivity is 127 dB. Frequency response range is 10 Hz to 40 kilohertz. The Opus OP.24 is kind of a unique looking device. It has this switch here in front which changes it from standard mode to bass mode, and it's kind of a cool design. It does have a flat back, but it has a medium size nozzle with a decent angle. The switch is very easy to turn, and I find that they're fairly comfortable. They don't isolate sound the greatest. Even with foam tips, you're probably 50-55% of outside noise being blocked. It's going to kind of muffle outside noises, but anything somewhat loud, cars with loud mufflers, coffee grinders, vacuum cleaners, that type of thing, you're definitely going to hear. You can kind of carry on conversation with other people as long as you pause your music. Using the foam tips made that a little bit more difficult depending on how loud the person talked. They're fairly easy to drive. I didn't really find them to be super picky as far as source driving them. Be careful if you have a device that's more bassy and warm sounding. The OP.24s will probably bloat up and sound a little bit too thick and muddy. One thing that's a frustration, big time frustration, is the cable. Extremely aggressive ear hooks. And it's just kind of a cable that's never lost its kinkiness. It's just kind of always had the swervy curvies. Very frustrating. How do they sound? The bass, there's a lot. Even on standard mode, there's a lot. As turning on the bass switch, and it becomes very, very dominant. These definitely will go into bass head levels. And unfortunately, it's just not the cleanest sounding bass when the bass switch is on. It becomes kind of muddy and thick and can be a little bit on the bloated side. I found that the bass has good energy for the most part on standard mode, and decent details and resolution. But when you put on that bass switch, it kind of becomes a jumbled mess, and there's just a lot of it. It does bleed into the lower mid-range. But speaking of the mids, the upper mid-range is very forward. They kind of becomes shouty and sibilant. Putting the bass switch on kind of thickens that up a little bit and tames that down just a little bit. But unfortunately, it's just always kind of shouty and sibilant prone. Going into the treble, the lower treble is very forward, aggressive, hot, and spicy. It does have nice air and space, and there's a good energy there, but unfortunately it's just a little bit too spicy and hot. Putting that bass filter on again does kind of help a little bit. Using foam tips, which is what I recommend, helps also. Opus does include 2 different types of tips, but unfortunately both of the silicone tips just didn't fit my ears. They are too shallow and just didn't fit well, and the OP-24 was falling out of my ears. Foam tips helped hold it in place, plus quelled those issues with the upper mids and treble range. Stage wise, it's fairly average. It's small, medium, and large. Never really got into the grand size. The imaging is okay. You can kind of follow things across the track, especially for a $50 IEM. It does okay. It's not the most precise and accurate. It's kind of in this neighborhood type of thing. Depth is not very good, especially with that bass switch enhanced. It just kind of really bogs it down and makes it very, very compressed sounding. I found that the layering wasn't very good either with the bass switch on. Other than that, with the standard, it was kind of okay as long as it wasn't a super complex track. Details were all right for a $50 headphone. Resolution kind of the same. Tone and timbre is metallic in the upper mid-range and treble regions. It's kind of natural, but when you really get into the upper mid-range and treble regions, it gets that metallic twinge to it, and things start sounding a little bit artificial. Brass and strings instruments and pianos really sounded kind of unnatural at times. So foam tips will help that. The Opus OP-24, it's an okay IEM for its price point. Something different with its switches, but you can do better. Up next, we have the Tanchjim Fission. The Tanchjim Fission is going to cost you $130, and it has a DMT5 inner-outer double magnetic dynamic driver, and it is 16 ohms of impedance, 126 decibels of sensitivity, frequency response range of 8 hertz to 48 kilohertz. And it comes with all sorts of things. You get nozzle filters, you get tuning switches on the back of the shell, you get several different types of tips, and you get a cable that has a swappable termination. You can go from 4.4 to 3.5 to USB-C. Yes, it does have a USB-C DSP EQ. You can use the Tanchjim app to change the DSPs and EQs. Talking about that real quickly, I found that the app worked very well, and the cable was nice. I actually enjoyed using the DSP EQ, which was very rare because I have not liked most of those types of cables, but Tanchjim has done a good job, and I found that you could definitely hear the differences in the EQ. Was it as good as the wired version? No. But for a portable use and not having to carry around a dongle, it worked quite well. So it is nice that they included that, and it is a swappable termination. Build-wise, the Tanchjim Fission is very nice. It's very similar to most other Tanchjim devices in this price point. Step-up design, and you have your swappable termination there, or your nozzle there, and then you have your little tuning switch here, which you have to use a little screwdriver that they provide to turn it from side to side. The tuning switches worked okay. I found that I preferred the default mode and the natural mode, which are the ones that go across. So if you're looking at, there's 4 positions. Default mode is facing in towards the nozzle. Natural is pointed outward. Pop is up, and then monitor is down. Monitor has the least bass and sounds the thinnest and the brightest and hottest sounding. I did not like monitor mode whatsoever. Pop mode is a little bit more V-shaped sounding, a little bit more energetic and fun sounding, has the most bass. And then default and natural are very similar. Default is slightly warmer and has a little bit more bass than natural, but it is less than the pop. Overall, I preferred natural and default. The Tanchjim Fission is not picky on sources, and you can use it with various types: warm, cold, neutral, analytical, and you'll hear the differences there. It does a nice job. It's fairly easy to drive as far as power. It's not really demanding either, so you don't have to worry about having to have something super powerful to push it. I found that the bass, it has got sub-bass roll-off. No matter what filter, no matter what combination you use, it does have a sub-bass roll-off. It is more mid-bass prominent, but it's nicely textured, has good punch, and it is well controlled. The mids are warm and engaging. They're slightly and mildly forward, but they're not aggressive. They're not shouty in any way. It just kind of puts a spotlight on the mid range, and it sounds very natural and accurate. The treble extends nicely. It's got a little bit smoother tendency to it. It's got enough engagement, but it's barely enough to be like really sparkly. It has decent air and space. I could use a little bit more, but if you use like the treble filter and then the monitoring mode, you got way too much treble. So all the other filters and stuff worked out quite well, but stay away from the monitor one unless you really like a cold, analytical, sterile type of presentation. I found that the soundstage is pretty average as far as width goes, but it does a good job of portraying small, medium, and large. You kind of get a little bit of grand size, but for the most part, it's small, medium, and large. It does a good job with depth. You can look into the stage a couple rows. Layering is also very good. Doesn't get confused or muddled up. Imaging is not the most precise, but it is good for its price point, and you can definitely go, that's in this neighborhood right here. Details are good for the price. Same thing with resolution being good for the price. The only time that I found any harshness, glariness, glassiness was using monitor mode and a treble filter. For the most part, it does a really good job of being refined, defined, and focused. Tone and timbre is very natural and accurate. Again, unless you're using that monitoring mode where it's super thin and just doesn't sound very natural at all. I do recommend using the Divinus Prism tips. I found that those fit me better than the stock tips. They're still wide bore, giving you a little bit more air and space, and they just fit my ears better. Plus, they're a little bit longer on the nozzle and just fit my ears better. The Tanchjim Fission is kind of the jack of all trades, master of none. It's among the top in the $130 price range when it comes to IEMs, but it's not the best in class, nor is it the worst in class. It's just kind of good in its price point of $130. It's kind of right there in the middle. It's like one of those football teams that is good and competes in every game and will scare the competition, will scare those higher end teams, but yet it can never seem to beat them and take them down, but yet it's always there pushing them to the end. And it's always challenging for the championship, but they can never make that next step. That's kind of the Tanchjim Fission. It's just kind of good, but not great. Lastly, we have the Fiio FH19. I want to thank Fiio for providing the FH19 for review. This is a $780 IEM. It's a dual dynamic 6BA configuration, 16 ohms of impedance, 109 decibels sensitivity, a frequency response range of 8 hertz to 40 kilohertz. I do want to point out one thing, and that is on the box, we have a high-res sticker. It's got to sound good. All right, so anyways, so Fiio throws everything at you when it comes to accessories. I'm not going to go through them all. I'm going to list the different tips that they provide, and then also mention about the cable and things like that. So just like the other products that we've reviewed, they do include swappable filters. There are 3 of them. Red is for bass, black is for the balance sound, and green is for treble. They definitely make a difference. The green ones definitely enhance the treble. I could not listen to them with the green ones. It was just too much treble, and it just really hurt my ears. It was very fatiguing. Bass definitely enhances the bass. You get more sub bass presence and a more impactful mid bass and upper bass presence. It's just, it gets dominant and goes into bass head mode. It was a lot of bass, and it could be somewhat fatiguing depending on the genre of music. So I preferred the balance mode, which is kind of in between the two of them and was very well controlled. And I preferred the balance mode. The tips that Fiio provides, you get HS20 silicone tips, you get HS18 ear tips, you get spin fits, you get foam tips, you get bass tips, you get balance tips, vocal tips, and dual flange tips. I preferred the balanced tip, and those are the ones that I used. The FH19s, couple things of note. They're very well built, but they're heavy and big. These things are large, they are thick, and they're heavy. Now the cable that they provide is very, very good. It does connect with MMCX. Anyways, connects with MMCX. It has this metal kind of thing where the connector is to support. Doesn't bother my ears, but could bother some. But anyways, it just adds to the weight. And the ear hooks, even though they have good tension to them, the IEMs are just so heavy they can't support it. And so it just kind of makes them to be a little bit loose on the ears to me. And then you have this nice split with a cinch that actually works. Swappable terminations, you get 4.4 and 3.5. The cable is a pure silver cable, 8 strands with a total of 224 sterling silver wires. Yeah, so it's a nice cable, well built. I like this cable a lot, but it's just the IEMs are just so heavy that these ear hooks maybe could have been a little bit tighter with the tension. Taking off the tip here, you can see that it's not the longest of nozzles. It is a little bit on the more medium size. You do have this nice wing, and you just spin off your filter like normal. Isolation of outside noises is actually pretty good with the FH19. They do fit in the ears and just kind of disappear. You're probably 55-60% of outside noises. They're not the best, but they're going to block out the majority of sounds. Louder things, coffee grinders, vacuum cleaners, cars with loud mufflers, that type of stuff, you're going to hear. It was a little bit difficult to carry on conversations with people, even with music paused. I did tend to have to pop one out of my ear. The FH19 being 16 ohms of impedance and 109 decibel sensitivity are fairly easy to drive. They're not super picky, and they do a good job of portraying your source, whether it's warm or neutral, cold, that sort of thing. You can definitely hear the differences. As mentioned, I did prefer it with the balanced filter and also the balanced tip. I found that the FH19 has big bass, deep bass, hard-hitting bass. It's very textured, it's dominant, but yet controlled. And it's very fun and engaging. Even on balanced mode, it's got a lot of bass, and it's just very engaging. I found that the treble filter, you still got a lot of bass. It did thin out just a little bit, but that treble was too dominant, and so it kind of overpowered the bass, even though the bass was still there. So I preferred the balance because it kind of gave a balanced version of both the bass, the mids, and the treble, and kept that fun factor, that deep, just hard-hitting type of bass that was very well controlled. Unlike other items that we talked about earlier, it wasn't very so dominant that it was fatiguing. This was a very pleasurable and engaging type of bass at the same time. The mids are very forward, they're engaging, they're slightly aggressive in the upper mids, especially with the treble filter. I found that they had moments of shoutiness, but there's good clarity. I did find that the upper mids could be somewhat fatiguing, depending on the music and also depending on the filter that was being used. They have just a little bit of a aggression to them, a little bit too much shoutiness, a little too forward. The treble's very vivid. It's slightly aggressive like the mids. It has moments of being too hot, There's good clarity. There's a lot of bite, edge, and crispness. This is a very revealing treble, especially if you use that treble filter. It really becomes super, super forthright in its presentation. Using the other two filters, it's just slightly forthright, but it can be fatiguing. If you're sensitive to treble, the FH19 may be a little too much, and it was borderline for me. I found that the stage is decently wide. It is a little bit on the average size when you use the bass filter, but using the balanced and the treble filter really opens it up. Using a treble one, you get a very wide open type of sound, and it gets into that grand size, but it tends to sound a little artificial. So I preferred the balanced one, which you still got some of that small, medium, large, and grand, just not as huge, but it sounded more natural and accurate sounding. Also, it's amazingly good with its imaging. Spot on. You can lock on and follow things as they enter and exit and move around the stage. You can really pinpoint and follow things. I found that the depth is very deep. You can look in 3-4 rows into the stage, and you're very immersed in the stage of the FH19. Details are amazingly good. You're not going to miss anything. You're going to hear things that you haven't heard before. It's a very revealing how much information it provides. It's eye-popping, and sometimes it's a little too much, and you kind of get into brain overload. You're just hearing so many things. The resolution is also very good. Using the treble filter, you can get a little bit of harshness in the uppers. I found that the tonality is very natural leaning. It's a bit thin in the uppers with any of the filters, especially that treble filter. Timbre is mostly natural, a little bit metallic in the uppers using that treble filter again. But overall, I found that the Fiio FH19 is an amazing little IEM. It is very pleasurable to listen to and fun and engaging. Depending on what filter you're using, can be at times a little too hot and spicy and a little bit too shouty. But it's a good little IEM. All right, so 4 devices, a couple of minutes with each one, a little bit more with a few of the others. And, you know, again, not everything deserves a full review. Some do, some don't. And I just thought that I would try something different. And I'll probably do this again with a few things, because there are some other things on the list that I haven't gotten to in a while. If you like this format, let me know down in the comments. But this has been Dave, the Honest Audiophile. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video. Speaking of next video, somewhere on screen, subscription links and notification bells. If you haven't already, please check those off. Don't forget to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to the video, and check out all the links down below. There's all kinds of information down there regarding how you can contact channel, follow channel, support channel. Speaking of supporting channel, I want to thank my supporters through Patreon, YouTube memberships, and one-time gifts. Thank you for all that you give to the channel. It's much appreciated. If you're interested in supporting the channel, check out the links down below. Speaking of the links down below, there's all kinds of other information like gear rankings, music recommendations, gear recommendations, all that kind of stuff is listed down below. And lastly, don't forget to enjoy the music, and that honesty is the best policy.